World War II was defined in the air as much as it was on land or sea, and the major combatants poured enormous resources into designing aircraft that could fly higher, faster, and carry more destructive power than anything before. Each famous aircraft from this era reflects a specific set of needs: air superiority, ground attack, bombing, reconnaissance, or maritime patrol. Together, they tell the story of how air power reshaped modern warfare. At the start of the war, two fighters quickly became symbolic of opposing sides in Europe: the British Supermarine Spitfire and the German Messerschmitt Bf 109. The Spitfire was elegant and agile, featuring thin elliptical wings that reduced drag and gave it superb turning performance. Early versions used the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, which provided a blend of power and reliability that allowed the aircraft to climb quickly and fight effectively at medium altitudes. The Spitfire's excellent visibility, responsive controls, and effective armament, initially 8 303 Browning machine guns, and later a mixture of cannons and machine guns, made it a favorite among pilots. It could be continuously upgraded, receiving more powerful engines, better armament, and modifications for low-level or high-altitude operations. The Spitfire's combination of speed, maneuverability, and adaptability helped Britain survive the critical early stages of the war and remain competitive in the fighter war all the way to 1945. Facing it was the Messerschmitt Bf 109, one of the most produced fighters in history. It featured a narrow-track landing gear that made takeoffs and landings tricky, but in the air it was fast, heavily armed, and well-suited to the Luftwaffe's tactics. The Bf 109's Daimler-Benz inverted V12 engine allowed for fuel injection, giving German pilots advantages in negative G maneuvers, where carbureted engines, like early Merlins, sometimes lost power. Its armament varied over time, but often included 20mm cannons and machine guns mounted in the nose and wings. It had excellent climb rate and acceleration, making it deadly in the hands of an experienced pilot. Throughout the war, it served not only as a frontline fighter, but also in roles such as bomber escort, high-altitude interceptor, and even ground attack in later marks. Another German aircraft that quickly gained a formidable reputation was the Focke-Wulf FW190. Compared to the Bf 109, the FW190 used a radial engine, which offered better protection against damage and allowed for a more rugged, versatile airframe. It had a wide landing gear that made it easier to handle on rough or improvised airfields. In combat, the FW190 was fast at low and medium altitudes, had impressive roll rates, and was heavily armed, often with a mix of machine guns and 20mm or even 30mm cannons. This made it a superb interceptor against bombers and a powerful ground attack aircraft when fitted with bombs and rockets. The FW190 forced the Allies to continually improve their own fighters. When it first appeared over the Western Front in 1941, it outclassed most RAF fighters at many altitudes until newer Spitfire variants and American fighters arrived. On the Allied side, the American P-51 Mustang became one of the most significant fighters of the war, particularly for its long-range escort role. Early Mustangs were limited by their engines at high altitude, but once the British Merlin engine was mated to the airframe, the P-51D and other late-war models combined excellent high-altitude performance with long range and good speed. This allowed them to escort American bombers deep into German territory, reducing bomber losses and helping to establish air superiority over Europe. The P-51 was aerodynamically clean, with laminar flow wings intended to reduce drag. Its typical armament of 650 caliber Browning machine guns gave it solid firepower against both fighters and lightly armored ground targets. Its long legs, speed and reliability changed the nature of the air war over Germany, making it harder for the Luftwaffe to mount effective large-scale defenses against Allied bombing campaigns. Another critical American fighter was the P-47 Thunderbolt. Heavier and bulkier than the Mustang, the P-47 used a powerful radial engine and a turbo supercharger system that gave it excellent performance at high altitude. Early in the war, it served as a high-altitude escort fighter, but it proved particularly valuable as a rugged ground attack platform. The P-47 could absorb substantial battle damage and still return home, thanks to its robust construction and radial engine, which was less vulnerable than liquid-cooled engines to a single bullet in the cooling system. Armed with 8 50 caliber machine guns, and often carrying bombs or rockets under the wings, the Thunderbolt excelled at strafing runs, tank busting, and close air support, especially in the later stages of the European campaign. In the Pacific theater, the Mitsubishi A6M-0 symbolized Japanese air power in the early war years. The Zero was incredibly lightweight, with minimal armor and self-sealing fuel tanks, choices that prioritized maneuverability and range over pilot protection. Its range was exceptional for a naval fighter, enabling Japan to project air power across vast stretches of ocean. Armed typically with two 20mm cannons and two 7.7mm machine guns, and benefiting from extraordinary agility at low speeds, the Zero outclassed many Allied fighters in 1941 to 1942. However, these advantages came at a cost. Its lack of armor and self-sealing tanks meant it burned easily when hit, and as Allied tactics improved and more advanced fighters arrived, the Zero's weaknesses became increasingly fatal. Responding to the Zero and other Axis fighters, the United States developed and fielded various aircraft, including the Grumman F-6F Hellcat. Designed with lessons learned from early encounters in the Pacific, the Hellcat emphasized durability, ease of production, and pilot protection. It used a powerful radial engine and sturdy construction, including armor plating and self-sealing tanks, making it tough to shoot down. The Hellcat's armament of 6 50 caliber machine guns gave it formidable firepower, and its performance was sufficient to match or exceed Japanese fighters in most combat conditions. From mid-war onward, the Hellcat became the backbone of U.S. Navy carrier aviation and was responsible for a significant majority of U.S. Navy aerial victories in the Pacific. Bombers played a decisive role as well, shaping strategies and the overall outcome of the war. The American Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress was central to the U.S. concept of daylight strategic bombing in Europe. It was heavily armed with multiple machine gun turrets for self-defense and designed to sustain substantial damage while still bringing its crew home. Its range and bomb load allowed it to strike industrial and military targets deep inside enemy territory. B-17 formations relied on tight defensive groupings, overlapping fields of fire, and eventually fighter escort to survive against German fighters. While not the largest bomber of the war, the B-17's toughness and symbolic presence made it one of the most recognizable aircraft of the conflict. Alongside it operated the consolidated B-24 Liberator, which featured a more efficient wing design, greater range, and larger bomb load compared to the B-17. Its long range made it invaluable for anti-submarine patrols over the Atlantic, closing the mid-Atlantic gap and limiting German U-boat operations. The B-24 also served in many theaters as a heavy bomber. Though sometimes considered more difficult to fly and less rugged than the B-17, its sheer numbers, range, and payload made it an essential workhorse of the Allied air campaign. On the Axis side, the German Heinkel He-111 and the Junkers Ju-88 were core Luftwaffe bombers. The He-111, with its distinctive glazed nose and elliptical wings, served as a medium bomber during the Blitz and early campaigns. Over time, it became increasingly vulnerable to modern fighters due to limited defensive armament and modest speed. The Ju-88, conversely, was one of the most versatile aircraft in the German arsenal. Initially designed as a fast medium bomber, its solid performance and adaptable airframe allowed it to be used in multiple roles: bomber, night fighter, dive bomber, reconnaissance aircraft, and even torpedo bomber. Upgraded repeatedly through the war, the Ju-88 was a practical illustration of German engineering focused on multi-role flexibility. Britain's principal heavy bomber was the Avro Lancaster. Unlike US bombers that emphasized heavy defensive armament and survivability in daylight, the Lancaster was optimized for night bombing operations. It had a very large bomb bay and was capable of carrying some of the heaviest bombs of the war, including the 4,000-pound Cookie blast bombs, and in specialized missions, massive Tallboy and Grand Slam bombs, used to destroy hardened targets like U-boat pens and viaducts. The Lancaster's 4 Merlin engines gave it good performance and reliability, and its design allowed for extensive modifications to meet unique mission needs, including the famous Dam Busters raids, using bouncing bombs against German dams. Soviet aircraft, though sometimes less celebrated in popular Western histories, were crucial on the Eastern Front. The Ilyushin Il-2 Sturmovik was one of the most important ground attack aircraft of the war. Designed with an armored bathtub around the cockpit, engine, and critical systems, it was heavily protected against ground fire. The Il-2 carried cannons, machine guns, rockets, and bombs, and its primary role was close air support, attacking tanks, artillery, and troop formations. Flying at low altitude and in large numbers, Sturmoviks helped blunt and then roll back German armored spearheads. The aircraft's emphasis on armor and firepower at low altitude reflected Soviet priorities, directly supporting ground troops and destroying enemy armor, rather than seeking air superiority far from the front. Reconnaissance and patrol aircraft also shaped the course of the conflict. Long-range maritime patrol planes like the American PBY Catalina helped locate enemy ships and submarines, extending the eyes of the Allies across the oceans. Fast photo reconnaissance versions of fighters and bombers, stripped of armament to gain speed and altitude, provided vital intelligence on enemy troop movements, industrial targets, and invasion defenses. These aircraft typically carried high-quality cameras and relied more on speed, altitude, and surprise than on guns for survival. By the end of the war, a revolutionary new type of aircraft appeared: the jet. The German Messerschmitt Me 262 was the world's first operational jet fighter. Powered by 2 turbojet engines, it was substantially faster than any Allied piston-engine fighter, capable of making high-speed attacks on bomber formations. Its heavy cannon armament made it extremely dangerous, but the Me 262 suffered from unreliable engines, shortages of fuel and trained pilots, and severe disruption from Allied bombing of its production and airfields. Entering service late and in small numbers, it demonstrated what future air combat would look like, but it arrived too late and in insufficient quantity to alter the outcome of the war. Taken together, these World War II aircraft show an intense arms race in engineering and tactics. Early in the war, speed and maneuverability were often the decisive factors. As the conflict went on, range, payload, protection, and multi-role flexibility became increasingly important. Fighters extended their range to escort bombers. Bombers grew in size and capability to strike deeper and harder. Ground attack aircraft became more specialized and better armored, and the first jets hinted at the future of aviation. Each design balanced trade-offs between speed, firepower, protection, and range, shaped by the strategies and industrial capacity of the nations that built them. The legacy of these aircraft lives on in modern air forces, where concepts like air superiority, strategic bombing, close air support, and long-range reconnaissance, refined in World War II, still define how wars are planned and fought in the air.